Hi, this is Pete Fernbaugh. Welcome to Trinity Talk. Today's guest is Dr. Michael Scarpone, Medical Director for the Sports Medicine Program here at Trinity Health System. Welcome, Dr. Scarpone. We're going to be talking about... Thank you. We're going to be talking about injuries, the sports season coming up. Let's just get a general question out of the way. What are the top injuries you see in the fall sports season?
Fall sports season, probably number one is anterior cruciate ligament injuries, and it's very common in football and in soccer, which are all going on in the fall. So those tend to be the big ones. So like football, knees and ankles, same with soccer. Some upper extremity injuries in football, not so much in soccer. So they, obviously don't use their arms as much. Concussions in both, because of heading the ball or two guys trying to head the ball or two ladies and they hit their heads together. So these things happen, and obviously football is helmet to helmet stuff.
Those are the routine injuries, the common ones, right?
Right.
But they're just as important as the ones that get in the headlines and draw the notice. So let's get into prevention, okay? How can athletes prepare for fall sports to avoid those common injuries?
Well, as we talked about earlier, the things with athletes should start way before the season starts. So your good coaches have programs that train these athletes on the off season, and like when you're coming off a season, like say football season is over, and now they may give you a few weeks kind of to recover, and especially if you're not playing another sport. Then they would start back into the gym, and there would be a program that would escalate over time back to the regular season again. And that's the best way. If you're playing another sport, that also keeps you in shape too, even if you're going from football, say, to basketball or wrestling. Again, the same thing. You're still conditioning, you're still working out. So it's not like you're not, keeping fit. The issue comes into is when you're, say, football, and you're going to do baseball or track in the spring, and you don't do anything in the winter, and then you kind of maybe skid through there, and again, you end up going out for baseball or track, and you're not really prepared because now you've had several months where you haven't done much. And again, 6 weeks of not doing anything, you're pretty much starting to lose whatever you had.
Right. The muscles that you've built during the season, it takes about 6 weeks for them to atrophy.
Correct.
So you can lose all that work you've done to prepare yourself for the season, to be in top form during the season. If you take too much time to rest and not train, you can lose a lot of what you've built.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we don't acknowledge as well as my old strength and conditioning coach at Steubenville High School used to say, it's hard to make and easy to lose.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's important to realize, for athletes to realize. So I just want to emphasize what you said there. You may look at yourself and you may say, I play sports in the fall and then I play sports in the spring. But there's that winter period that athletes really need to be asking themselves, am I just staying dormant, or am I actually keeping up on my body, on my diet, on all of that to prepare for the next sports season? That period of time is very crucial.
And like I said, usually a good coaching program has something built in there. Well, not always, but usually.
The other thing is, I think sometimes the tendency is you're an exceptionally gifted athlete to skimp on your training. To not show up for all the training sessions that are scheduled. You shouldn't shortchange yourself. You're not just hurting your team, you're hurting yourself. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, no, I tell people, I'll give this example. I was a pitcher for the Pirates when I first joined. And the guy was probably one of the best pitchers you would see. And the coaches were real high on him. He could throw every pitch extremely well. A super fastball, did not want to work out, always came into camp out of shape, kind of drank beer a lot. And he still performed really well, but he never realized his potential, and he just ended up, eventually not playing anymore because he got too out of shape and couldn't perform the way he needed to. But skills and his talent was off the chart.
Right.
So I tell people all the time, even at the major league level or pro sport level, what makes someone become a starter and someone not. And sometimes it isn't always talent. Sometimes it's perseverance, staying healthy, and maybe you're not the best, but you're pretty good.
Right.
And you're there every time, and a coach can depend on you. Mm-hmm. And then that can make a big difference. And those people tend to be take good care of themselves, mm-hmm. health-wise, nutrition-wise, all that. So
you can really hurt your upward trajectory then if you don't take time to sleep and rest and train and take care of your body, not only during the season, but before and after. You can really hurt your ability to level up in your chosen athlete.
No, definitely. And so if you look at a couple things, so your immune system, we're talking about, what prevents it. So, one thing, you don't want to get sick during the season, right. Which when you're working out and working hard, practicing games, every week, that can happen. Mm-hmm. I always tell people there's an overtraining issue too, where mm-hmm. you actually suppress your immune system, and then there's a window where it's good, or you're not doing enough. Mm-hmm. So there's you have to be in that zone where you're doing good exercise, but you're not overdoing it, and then actually diminishing, mm-hmm. getting a diminishing return on that. And that immune system not only fights infection, but it also helps you heal your injuries. So all the bumps and bruises, the muscle pulls, all the things that maybe aren't catastrophic, but they maybe slow you down. And by the middle of the season or so, you're kind of maybe not running quite as fast as you were and all that. And so your immune system is really important for that. And the number one thing I tell people, what keeps your immune system up is 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
Right.
Number one. Number two is nutrition, getting adequate protein intake. And if you're a young athlete, and I'm going to say 14 to 21, because there's a lot of people we take care of, they need more protein than say you or I,
right.
Adults. All right, we're not growing, we're not playing,
right.
high level sports. So our protein intake is not going to be as demanding as theirs. Mm-hmm. So most of the time, I would say that's probably the number one thing in school. School athletes, that they don't get enough protein in their diets.
That's true, but also the high school athletes I know, it's rest, because those athletes tend to also be exceptional students. So they're doing after school practice, then they go home and they have several hours of homework or whatever. How can a high school athlete or even a college athlete with a demanding schedule, maybe there's a job thrown in there, so they're playing sports, working a job, doing their homework, trying to keep up on their studies. How can they, when there's not enough hours in the day for them to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, how can they compensate for that?
Well, that's a tough one, because I don't know how you compensate for sleep. That's one of those things. Things that, though, can help with that is blue lights. So, basically screens. They tend to mess your sleep up. So if you want to get good sleep, even if it's, say, 6 hours, and you get 6 hours of good sleep, and that can be very beneficial too. And why I say blue lights? Well, blue lights mess up melatonin, which is secreted in your body, especially when you're going to go to sleep. And the blue lights suppress that excretion. It's almost like being in the sunlight, because when you wake up first thing in the morning, you actually, by getting sunlight in your eyes, actually turns that system off and then lets you wake up. So actually sunlight in your eyes early in the morning can make you feel better and wake up quicker, and more energetic, and the opposite at night. So getting good sleep, and unfortunately, today, with the screens is a major problem. In the sense, my opinion, but not every kid, but a lot of kids are like, if they're not doing homework and sports, they're on the screen of some type.
Right.
And I don't want to say you shouldn't watch TV or you can't play a game or something like that, but maybe limit that, especially closer to bedtime. If your bedtime is 10 o'clock, I'm just picking a number out of the air here, but if it's 10 o'clock, maybe just don't play any games after 9. Mm-hmm. Or don't do screen time. Maybe do something.
Give your brain a chance to slow down.
Yeah, and don't expose your eyes to the light.
Right.
That will.
I think that's a good note for everybody.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
In general, in our society in general,
is sleep deprived. Yeah. So, well, moving on, continuing with the whole theme of staying healthy during fall sports season. Beyond injuries, how can one stay generally healthy during the fall sports season?
So, sleep, nutrition's big, and then just good warm-ups, good stretching. So I tell people warm-ups probably when I was playing a sport and now it's different. We know that actually you're better off to just do a slow jog when you come out and kind of get your muscles, blood flow going and all that, then do your stretching. That tends to be better. And some active stretching is more of maybe stretching and doing some exercises with that. It doesn't have to have weights in your hands or anything, but just things moving, trying to get those muscles to get blood flow, get loose. And then, so when you go in there, you're not going to hopefully pull your hamstring or quad muscle or something because, you weren't warmed up enough. And that becomes more important as the weather gets cooler because we have more of a tendency to have less blood flow because we're cold and our bodies take the blood to the core and to our center to keep our core warm. So you have to get the blood flow out there even more so than right now when it's pretty warm up.
Plenty of sleep. You're saying 7 to 8 hours, proper nutrition, but also the stretching and warm up is just as important to avoiding not only just injuries, but keeping yourself generally healthy. Excellent. Great common sense reminders that we just want to skip on.
I think, and to go back to something you said earlier, was that, sometimes athletes, especially good ones, will kind of skate over that, especially if the coach isn't looking or something. And it's to their benefit to do it. It's not just to the coaches.
Right. Even in daily workouts, it's easy to you want to just jump to the stuff that really seems effective.
When you're time constrained, I get it.
But that stretching is especially as you get older.
Yeah, even more so.
What are some tips? You've given us some. You've given us some tips for avoiding joint injuries in sports. Just the general tips. What are some tips specific to joint injuries, to avoiding those that folks can enact?
Well, I think, again, going to that preseason training, there's like ACL prevention exercise programs that have come out, and we have them here, and trying to keep those, preventing those injuries. There are things even with shoulders, which is probably more of a wrestling, basketball, throwing type of thing, but things we call proprioception. So the simple way to explain proprioception, if I put my hand behind me and wiggle my fingers, I don't have to look at that to know that.
Right.
That's the proprioceptive things tell me that something's going on with my hand that, I don't have to look at it to see it. That can be trained too. And a lot of times we train for strength, but not so much for proprioception in the sense of where's my muscles and tendons and joint and time and space. And if you think about that, that's kind of what athletics are. And if you ever think about, and then with that comes neuromuscular function, in other words, how the muscles fire in sequence, right? If I throw a ball or run or whatever, my muscles are firing in a certain sequence. And for whatever reason, that sequence gets messed up. Maybe you've had an injury, you had a surgery, all those things. You have to reestablish the sequence. And you'll see this. You'll see someone who has a surgery, say a knee surgery or something, and they come back and it's not cutting the way they normally did. Maybe they have a slight limp or something. And you notice it, and everything's technically is good. The repair is good, everything's good. And this goes into what we were just talking about. And and that is a program, the exercise program too, that can be very beneficial. And during and before the season. So that's one of those things during the season you can actively do. And try to, and that's called DNS, and we have a physician in our practice that does that.
It's important, I think, to pause here and just emphasize how much Trinity's sports medicine program has to offer athletes in the area in terms of what we're discussing here.
Yeah, I think we really have tried to put together a good team. I think we have, and trying to actually improve that. And we talked about some of that metabolic testing and things would at some point our practice manager and I want to do. So and we're working on that as we keep it a daily conversation.
So we've talked briefly about exercises that can help strengthen the muscles. Are there any other exercises that can help strengthen the muscles around the joints?
I mean, generally a good weightlifting program. And most, again, if you go into high schools, just say in our area, most coaches have a weightlifting day in there. So they kind of trying to maintain the strength you gained in that preseason training. You can't lift weights every day because obviously you're practicing. You have a game on Friday night, all these if you're soccer, you have sometimes 2 games a week. So obviously you can't be like doing a heavy weight workout the night before you go out and play, So there are some limitations with that, but a lot of times they work them in. I know certain teams swim on Saturday after the game, to kind of do that type of thing. And that's something that's good for muscle strengthening overall body. So there's ways of doing that. But again, just a good general weightlifting program you can do in the gym. You don't need a pool. If you have one, that's great. But some people do and some people don't.
We hear a lot about pulled muscles or ligaments, and not just athletes. It happens to all of us. How can not only athletes, but everyone avoid those pulled muscles and ligaments?
I'll go back to warming up, having a good immune system. Because we all tweak stuff. And, if you really think about it, we probably every week we do something. We're working out, we're doing something in our house, working in the yard, whatever. And you tweak your calf muscle, and you did something. So that happens a lot. So again, keeping your immune system as good as you can get it, keeping that type of thing, so you heal faster, basically. We can't totally avoid all dings and bangs, I call them, because they happen. And usually I tell people the dings and bangs start to accumulate as you get out to the 5th and 6th week of the season. And and that's when it gets tough. Even in baseball, you really talk to pro pitchers that pitched for a long time in Major League Baseball. The biggest thing was August. When they got out of the All-Star break and then they got into August, that's when the wheels start falling off, because you now pitched over half a season and now the arm's getting tired, the shoulder getting elbow, all that. You have some back aches, and all that stuff starts to accumulate. And it's like, and sometimes that's where the nutrition and working with the trainers and things like that to stretch and have them. And even in some chiropractic type of stuff or osteopathic manipulation type of stuff can be very beneficial in keeping joints loose. So there are other options to do, and sometimes you need that, depending on the athlete.
Do you think it's just human nature to get sloppier as the season goes on? Or not even sloppier, just less attentive to taking care of the various...
Oh yeah, you get tired. We all get tired. So, you're like anything, I don't want to say it's a grind, but it is in some ways. You're doing the same thing every week. Every week you're preparing. And so at some point you start to, do I really have to do this? Do I really have to do that? I really feel like doing something else.
How can folks combat that mentality, that tendency to just give in to the fatigue?
That's where I tell people you got to have some outlet on stress. And that may be, for me, that's getting on a bike and riding somewhere, a pedal bike. And for someone else, it might be walking in the woods. For my wife, is going out and tending to her garden. She, that really relaxes her. So something like that can, where you can kind of take 30 or 40 minutes that I can kind of clear my mind and do something I enjoy, whatever that is. So it can be different. I think the physical aspect of like gardening or walking or riding a bike or something, you have to ride hard. I'm just saying get out and getting outside and stuff, I think just really is important. And we know that just decreasing cortisol levels, so stress, you get your natural cortisone goes up, which actually is against your immune system. So if you get too stressed out, whether physically or mentally, the cortisol levels go up, your immune system actually drops down. And, so decreasing mental stress is important. And that's, I think you just got to find that individual thing you like.
Final question.
Kayaking. I had one guy that he would go kayaking for 30 minutes and he would drive out to Raccoon State Park.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a local guy. And we'd go out there and come back. And then he'd ready to play again tomorrow.
It's amazing how much those activities, I love kayaking too. It's amazing how much that can just clear your head.
Yeah. So something, I think, like I said, it's a little different for everybody.
And
kayaking, biking, whatever that is.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's more effective, I find, for myself if I can leave my device, just no music, nothing, just nature. Yeah. That can have such a transformative effect.
Oh, yeah. 30 minutes of that, and you're like, okay, now I can
take on the world. Yeah. Final question for you. You've referenced throughout our conversation your time working with the Pirates, and I just want to kind of put a button on everything that we've been discussing in this podcast. You've seen this at the professional athletic level, so you're bringing that knowledge when you work with high school and college athletes. You're bringing your experience on the professional level to our local level, which we're so blessed to have you. Your expertise in our area.
Well, thanks.
Would you go into what you did with the Pirates, just for those who are curious?
No. So it was, one of the team physicians. There was a number of us because 82 games and schedule, it gets tough for one doctor to do all that. I think years ago, guys, it was maybe a couple, but in today's world with the schedules and everything, it's a little harder. So basically, you took care of, you would cover certain games, take care of injuries. You'd go to spring training, do all the preseason physicals, give them any of their vaccinations and things, review their lab work with them, and pretty much running like a physician would for anybody.
Right.
That they're athletes. And the big thing you realize with athletes is they're humans, but their demands are a lot higher than a lot of us. You talk about mental focus. We had a team psychologist. We had guys who worked on mental aspects. They were mental trainers from the military. We had obviously physicians. You had nutritionists. You had executive chefs. So there's this athletic trainers, physical therapists, and even chiropractors that all worked in this group, and we all worked together. And that's was one of the things, is just trying to develop that same kind of team network. Now, obviously, at a pro level, it's a big machine. At our level, obviously, a little smaller, but still, we've kind of tried to bring that comprehensive approach.
We're fortunate to have you locally working with our athletes, working with our...
Well, thank you. I've been lucky enough to have some really good people around me that has helped a lot.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
One thing we were talking about earlier about metabolic disorders. So to throw this out there, 80%, according to some different studies out there, 80+% of Americans have some type of metabolic syndrome. And what is that? That's insulin resistance, and means that some way down the road you end up being a type 2 diabetic. And these are things that are preventable, and as time goes on, we're hoping that, and they actually affect your performance even if you're 18 years old. So there are things that we're looking at to bring, hopefully that we'll be able to do some better testing, and we can talk about that down the road.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, Dr. Scarpone. I really appreciate it. And thank you for tuning in to this episode of Trinity Talk. We'll see you next time.